Hello again, everybody. Today, I thought we would talk a little more about Photoshop layers. What I'm going to do is walk through the Chapter 4 demo in this book, the Photoshop Classroom in a Book for 2024. If you haven't purchased this book, I hope this demo will help you learn more about layers and kind of see some of the stuff demonstrated for you. And, if you have, you can follow along and kind of execute it following. This is to explain step by step, more in depth, what layers are and how to use them in a practical way. So here we are on my screen that I'll show you the demo on. Come down here and I will open up Photoshop. You can see several of my recent files here. Depending on how much you've used Photoshop, you may find some of your own recent files there. But in this case, let's choose Open, and I will go to my Lesson 4 Photoshop Classroom in a Book, and let's open the End folder, End file. I'm going to go ahead and click on the green plus arrow to make this take up my whole screen. I find that it's easier to work when I have my entire desktop taken up with Photoshop. So this is where we're going to get to. This is a postcard. We're going to walk through this demo and create this with multiple layers, some effects, some text, as you can see, and learn a little bit about layers. So here we go. Over here on the right-hand side, you find your layer property panel. And so here we have first the background layer, which is locked. That lock means the layer is protected from changes. You can see up here, these options are grayed out and unavailable: opacity and the layer blending mode. You can still you can still edit the layer content itself, such as painting on it. Right? You can still edit the content on that layer, such as with the paintbrush, but you can't make any layer changes such as opacity, delete the layer, change the blending mode, things like that. Then we have several more layers that are all our different elements of this image. And you can see when I click the eyeball, it makes that layer either visible or not. This is a smart layer, meaning that it is sort of self-contained, that when you make changes to this smart layer, they are also non-destructive in the same way that working on this particular file is. So you can make multiple changes to a smart object or a smart layer and then step backward and forward through those as if it was an independent file, which is what it is. And then those changes that you make will be updated in this working document. So this is what we'll get to at the end. You can see that there are a lot of different types of layers here. We have some clipping mask layers. There's a text layer here with a clipping mask applied to it, etc., etc. Here's some more text. So this is where we're going to get to, and now I'm going to open the start file. So I'll hit Command W on my Mac. I'm going to go ahead and not save this, and I'm going to choose File, Open, and Start. Here we are with a pineapple. And the first thing that we're going to do is place another image into it. So I'm going to choose File, Open, and select Beach. Okay, here we are. And one of the things we want to make sure to do is to give layers names, descriptive names, so that we know what layer we're working on. Layer 1, layer 2, layer 3 kind of gets confusing after a while. So if we give our layers descriptive names, they will make more sense as we continue working. So I've renamed this layer Beach, and I want to drag this image into my working image right now called 04 Start. So I'm going to go up here to Window, and I'm going to choose Arrange to Up Vertical. There we go. And now I see both of these images on the same screen, right? The two different files. I'm going to come over here to my Move tool, or hit the letter V on the keyboard as the keyboard shortcut. I'm going to come over here onto my beach layer, make it active, my beach file, and the beach layer is active within it. And I can just click and drag this over into my pineapple file. As you can see, it dropped where I had my cursor. So let's go back. If I hold the Shift key down as I move my beach file, so I'll hold Shift and click and drag, it will drop the new image on its own layer in the center of the document to which you're dragging it. And so now that we have the beach file drug into the pineapple, I'm going to go ahead and close this one. Don't save. And here we are with our original document. I just thought about, I have O4 start here. Let's go ahead and name this something else so that we can kind of keep our copies together. I'm going to save this as O4 working and choose save. Okay. Now we have our image file saved as a working document. And then we can easily look it up again, and find it and say, this is the one we're working on, not start, not finish, not et cetera, et cetera. So here we go. To view a single layer, we could just turn off the eyeballs on the other layers. See, I clicked this pineapple eyeball here and turned it off. I can turn the background off. That'll give us the checkerboard of transparency. This is how transparency is represented in Photoshop. So now we're going to use the stroke layer style to add a border to this beach scene. So I'm going to choose layer, layer style, and stroke. And here we have the layer style stroke menu along with the other layer styles that are all in here, but we can see the stroke option is selected. And so now let's change the size to 5 pixels. Position will be inside. That's inside the edges of the selection. Our blend mode will be normal. Opacity 100%. Color will be white. This is our color selection menu, and you can see there's a lot going on here. You can use hue, saturation, brightness, lab color, CMYK, etc., RGB values. I use hexadecimal code a lot, which is this highlighted, these 6 zeros. Hex means 6. 6 numbers is what it is. And what these are pairs of numbers that represent RGB values, red, green, and blue values. So to make white, it's actually FFFFFF. Yes, black is 000000, and white is FFFFFF. I'll click OK. There we are, and I will click OK again, and we can see the white border around this image. Now that we've added the stroke frame to the beach scene, let's go ahead and turn on the rest of our layers here in our working document so we can see what all we've got. The way the layers are arranged is called the stacking order, and other elements such as the beach file that we drug in will go at the top of that order, as you can see here. And what we can do is move this beach layer to work with the way it's supposed to work among the other layers. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag it down to be on top of the pineapple again. Perfect. Right? Now we can see all of the layers. We can see the postage. We can see the word Hawaii, the flower, this beach scene that we added, and the pineapple, along with our white background layer. This seems like a good time to save the file, so I'll go ahead and choose Command Save or File, Save. Save isn't highlighted now because I just saved it with my Command Save, so nothing has changed since the last time I clicked Save. And there we are. So that's the layer order. Another element of layers is the opacity. This is how transparent or see-through a layer might be. So let's go ahead here and we'll choose the postage layer, and I'm going to change this opacity down to 25%. Right, and now you can see through it. It's only 25% opaque. And so now we can talk about blending modes. Each layer has a blending mode applied that determines how that layer interacts with the layer below it. Let's try this on the pineapple layer. So I'm going to go through here and hide all of the other layers so that I can see my pineapple layer. And I can do two things. I can control click or right click on this layer and choose duplicate layer, or I can click and drag down here onto the plus sign and it makes another layer called pineapple copy. Then I'm going to apply a blending mode to the pineapple copy of overlay. What the overlay blending mode does is basically finds the difference between the light and the dark pixels, and it sort of sharpens the edges in a way. You can see, right, I turn off that duplicate layer. It's the same thing, but with the blending mode, we've asked Photoshop to make a calculation about the relationship among the pixels in each layer and do something else with it. In this case, it's the overlay mode that we've applied, which kind of makes it pop a little bit. And let's do the same thing with the postage. So I'll come up here to the postage, and I'm going to change that one to multiply. Oops, right? We don't want that because I still have the pineapple copy selected, right? So in order for me to adjust the layer blending mode of the postage layer, I have to select the postage layer as the active layer. So now that I have the postage layer as the active layer, we're going to change the blending mode on the postage layer. But I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to hold the space bar down to get my panning or hand tool. And I'm going to roll up here so we can see the postage mark a little better. Zoom out. There we go. You see here where it's going through the pineapple leaves? Let's change this blending mode to multiply. And what that does is makes those postage lines just a little bit darker. Very subtle. This is one of the reasons we zoom in so we can see our work as we're working. Go ahead and save it again. Command S. Now we're going to resize and kind of transform a layer. So let's go ahead. I'm going to hit Command 0 to bring the entire document back visible on the screen. And we are going to turn on the beach layer so we can see that again. And then we will select that layer because it's visible. Now we'll select that layer as the one that we're going to work on. I'm going to choose Edit, Free Transform, also available as Command T. And we can see this bounding box pop up. Resizing, rotating, flipping, all of that is called a transformation in Photoshop. So what we're going to do is come and grab one of these handles and scale the picture in to about 50%. You can see what's happening here in this top tool menu. So we can see we've resized it down to 64.71%. And we can see that this chain means the width and the height are locked together, so it's changing size proportionally. And I'll go ahead and drag it a little more to make it about 50%. As opposed to dragging, you can also just enter any specific value you want here. So I'll put 50. You can see that the height changed at the same time. And now we're going to rotate the image about 15 degrees. So it's 15.61, but I want to make it clean, so I'll just come up here and type 15. You know, oftentimes we're doing this visually, but sometimes you have a need to do it like a specific measurement. So that's where that might come in handy. And so we like that. I'm going to click Return, or I can click the check mark up here to commit that transformation. Commit transformation. Enter. There we go. Now I'm going to make the flower layer visible, and we're just going to kind of take this. I made the flower visible, but I didn't activate the flower layer. The beach layer is still the one selected, and I have my move tool on. And I'm just going to kind of make sure that this is sort of tucked right in here. Very nice. And let's go ahead and save again. File, save. Okay, and now let's use a filter and add a layer to this and make it look like artwork. I'm going to come into my document here, and I'm going to choose the background layer. And then I'm going to choose the plus sign to add a new blank layer. That layer will be added above the active layer. So in this case, there's now a layer called layer 1 above the background layer. I'm going to name that layer clouds. And then I'm going to come over here to the color picker, the foreground color, and click to select it. Here I want to get we're going to make a cloudy background. So I want a cloud blue. We can enter some RGB values. Again, red, green, and blue. So let's do like 48 and 138 and 174. And that gave us this color blue, which you can see 48, 138, 174 translates to 38A AE in hexadecimal, and the various other values, color values that you can get there. So I'll click OK, and nothing has changed. So now we're going to use a filter to render some clouds. So I'll choose Filter, Render, and Clouds. Again, I have the clouds layer active. I've chosen a blue color for my foreground color. Click Clouds. Voila. It's now made a cloudy background using that filter and the foreground and background colors that I have selected here. And so now we're going to add, we're going to drag a file in to create a smart object that I mentioned before, and add that to this composition. So I'm going to go ahead and click to reduce the file. So I've shrunk down my Photoshop window here on this screen. And I'm going to come over here to find this folder, and I'll select Flower 2. And I'll just drag it right on in here. See the plus sign? I let it go. There is this file called Flower 2. It has been imported. And now what I can do, you can see the transformation bounding box. I can click Return to commit that transformation. And when it has been committed to this file, you can see the little icon here that says this is a smart object, meaning you can make additional changes to that without making changes to your document. So I'm going to go ahead and click the green plus sign to make Photoshop big again. And we'll drag the flower on down here. Now let's add some text. First, I'm going to click the eyeball next to the Hawaii layer. This flower layer is in the wrong place, so let's go ahead and drag it down beneath the word Hawaii. Now I'm going to choose Select, Deselect Layers to make sure that no layer is selected. You can see nothing is selected here. I'm going to come over here to the toolbar and choose T. I can also hit the letter T on my keyboard. And then let's go to Window, Character, so that we can see the options that we have for building text. And so here in this character window, we have the font name, the style of the font, its size, etc., kerning, tracking, case, etc. options. So now let's choose a font. I'm going to come down here and choose Futura. Okay. Now we'll leave the font weight as condensed. I'm going to choose a size and make it like 36 points. Change the tracking value here to 250. Tracking, remember, is the space between all the letters. Kerning is the space between two individual letters. And let's come up here and see if we have a bold in here. Oh, condensed extra bold. So I'll go ahead and do that for the font weight. I will choose all caps to make all of the letters capital letters. And make sure the anti-aliasing is crisp to make it crisp on the page. Then I'll come up here and choose center to center my text. And then I will take that text that I had created, that text layer, and I'll overwrite this example text and I'll type Island Paradise. You can see how all of those letters are capital. I did not have my shift key pressed or the caps lock button on. It's because I selected all caps here in the character panel. This is too big, so let's go ahead and change this font size down to something a little more reasonable. Oops, I left out the E, so I'll go ahead and add that in. That looks nice. I'm going to click my Move tool here and make this a little better centered on Hawaii. There's my guide to the center of this text, and so I'll drop it right there. Lovely. Now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and add a gradient to the Hawaii layer. So let's come over here and select this Hawaii layer, and now I will control click and choose select pixels. What that does is selects all the non-transparent pixels in the layer. And now in the tools panel, I'm going to look for the gradient tool, which is this one here. I click on it and I can see that the linear gradient style is the one selected, which is this one here. Now we're going to click on the foreground color to change that color. I want a bright shade of orange. I'll double click it and come here. I'll scroll down to change my hues available, and I'll choose like a bright orange, right? Very bright, brightest orange I can get. Okay, so now I have chosen my orange color, and I'm going to choose Window Gradients now, and can see my gradients properties panel open. I'm going to click the foreground to background gradient. My other options here are foreground to transparent and black and white. So I'll click foreground to background. There we go. That has been applied within the text that I have selected in the Hawaii layer, and looks pretty nice. But the Island Paradise text isn't really popping out. We can't see it as well as we might like to. And so we're going to apply a layer style to this layer, similar to the way we applied a stroke border to the beach image earlier. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to choose Island Paradise, and I'm going to give it a drop shadow. So I'll come here to the FX options, which is your layer styles, and I'm going to choose drop shadow. Here we have the name of the layer. Blend mode will be multiply. Opacity, let's say it's 75% to make it a little darker. Give it a 78-degree angle, perfect, as if the light is coming sort of from behind it. See, this angle gives you an idea of where and how that might change things. So you can see as I twist the angle around that the shadow behind Island Paradise is changing its location. So let's give that 78. Distance will be 5 pixels. That's the number of pixels sort of out the shadow goes. Spread will be 30%. The size will be 10 pixels. Here the use global light option is checked, and what that does is anything else that has a lighting angle selected to it in this document, the lighting angle will then be applied to all of those as well. So I'll click OK. And there we go, nice drop shadow behind Island Paradise there. And now let's make Hawaii stand out a little more by applying an effect to it. So I'm going to select the Hawaii layer, and I'm going to choose the effects button, and I'm going to choose stroke again. And then here under structure, we're going to make the size 4 pixels, position it outside of the edges of the letters, outside. Opacity 100%, color will be green, somewhere in here, that's fine. And click OK. Now we have a nice green outline stroke around the word Hawaii. Let's put a little drop shadow on the flower as well. So we'll come to the flower layer to select it. Again, I'll choose effects down here at the bottom for the layer effects. I'm going to give it a drop shadow. Let's say opacity 60, mode is multiply, distance is 13 pixels, spread 9%. And you could adjust these numbers as you like, right? It's on it's up to you visually how you like it to look. And the blend mode is multiply. Now let's add satin also to this. We click on satin and we see the blend mode is multiply. We want to change this color to something other than black. You can see how that color affects it now. So let's see if we can find something nice to sort of set off that color. Maybe in here somewhere, like a sort of purpley. Let's try that. Sort of goes with the flower below. Great. Nice little purpley color. And 20% opacity, a distance of 22. And so what this one will do, we'll give it a kind of satiny finish. And we can reverse the effect by choosing invert. Let's click OK here. Very nice. So let's see. I can come over here and see the before and after of the effects. So this is before. I clicked the eyeball next to effects to hide it. And that's after. Before, after. Little shadow, little kind of texture effect there on the top of the flower. And we'll save again. Now let's add an adjustment layer. What an adjustment layer does is you can make color and tone adjustments to the image, and they are only on that layer. So they don't affect all of they affect all of the layers, but they don't change anything permanently within those layers. Let's change the color of this flower. Here's flower 2. I'll select it. Let's come up here and choose a hue saturation under the single adjustments option. And here in the hue saturation properties panel, let's change the hue to 43 and the saturation to 19, lightness 0. There we go. But you can see that everything has been changed. All of the colors have been changed. So let's make this hue saturation adjustment apply only to the layer directly below it. And we call that a clipping mask. So what we do to create a clipping mask is we can come here in the properties panel and click this button, and you see now it has this little arrow here which is saying it only applies to this layer directly below it. Another way to make a layer a clipping mask, I've just undone that one, is to hold down the Option key while you're over on the layer and see when it turns into the little arrow with the box. I click that, and now that's another way to make it into a clipping mask. And let's save. If you decide you want to update the layer effects, you can do that. So for example, let's go to the Island Paradise layer, and I'll hit the T tool for text. And you can see I now have the properties for the type layer. So I haven't selected anything on the layer. I've just selected that layer. And now I'm going to change some of the properties. So here I have 24 points. We'll make the font size 36 again. And you can see how that affected that text without me actually having to select anything in there. It affected everything on the layer. So let's move those back to 24. Try 30. I kind of like that better. So let's try that one. And now let's create a border from the selection. So we're nearly done. I'm going to select the Move tool and the postage layer, and I'm going to move that down here more to the middle of the card. Then I'm going to select Island Paradise and choose to make a new layer, and that layer then, blank layer, is added on the top of the stack. I'm going to choose Select All, and I'll get the marching ants around the entire border of the image. Now I'll choose Select, Modify. I'm modifying my selection, and we'll choose Border. Let's make it 10 pixels. Okay. Now it has added a 10 pixel border. You saw the marching ants dotted line kind of shrink in a little bit. Then I'm going to choose white for my foreground color. I'll just click X to reverse the foreground and background colors. And then I'll choose Edit, Fill. I have foreground color here selected for contents, mode, normal, and opacity 100%. Okay. And now we have a 10 pixel white border. I can choose Command D to deselect, and there we have our postcard. But we don't want to send it to a client or print it with all of these layers because it's much larger than it needs to be file size wise. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure to save it again, and I'll choose File, Save. So now I have the .psd, the Photoshop document is saved with all of its layers, edits, it's still editable in Photoshop, etc. But to send to a client or for printing, I want to flatten the image. So I can come up here to Layer and Flatten Image, and all of those layers have now been squished down into the single background layer. Now I can save it in whatever format I like. So I'll choose Save As. I'll make it a JPEG and save it to my desktop and call it 04 Hawaii Postcard and save. Maximum because I like that high quality, and OK. You could also choose File, Save a Copy. If you wanted to, for example, save it as a Photoshop PDF, which I'll do here by selecting Format and then choose Photoshop PDF. And it says copy up here, copy.pdf, save, OK. High quality print, etc., etc. All good. You don't necessarily need to preserve Photoshop editing capabilities. That will add a little more file size to your image. So I'll turn that off and choose Save PDF. And so there we are. We have successfully gone through and talked about layers, adding images, layer effects, adjustment layers, clipping masks, a whole bunch of stuff. So I hope that was helpful and productive for you all. And we will apply this stuff that we have learned here in this demonstration to our work ongoing. So thanks for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm at japarker at atlantatech.edu. Go ahead and send those questions, comments, anything I can help you with along. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon.